All right, here we go with part 8 of the Tamiya versus monogram 124 scale Ferrari Testarossa Miami Vice Challenge. All right, today we're going to be looking at the suspension systems of both cars. The monogram here, the Tamiya here. Now, the Tamiya has the engine installed. The monogram does not, because I'm missing a few parts from the engine. This is a very old kit, and in the process of ordering another one just to get the parts so I can complete it. But we can take a look at the suspension systems here. Here you can see the suspension of the monogram has, the parts are all there. Very fiddly to put together. Let's see if we can focus on that. The parts don't fit exactly well, and many adjustments have to be made, unlike the Tamiya, which went together extremely well. Let's see. Need a little focus there. A little focus. There we go. Here you can take a look at the twin shocks. The spindle, which is a two-piece assembly connected to the upper and lower control arms, which I don't understand why they would do it that way. But this was their method of making the kit. Sway bar. All the parts are represented. But that two-piece spindle assembly and the fact that the shocks mount to the chassis instead of to the actual cradle makes it quite a bit difficult to put together and line everything up. Now we look at the Tamiya rear suspension, as we saw previously in the other parts of this comparison. They're bolted to the subframe, not to the chassis. And they line up perfectly because you're not lining up the shocks between two different components. It's all part of the same component, which is the subframe. So misalignment issues are at almost non-existent. Here you can see the control arms a little bit better defined than those on the monogram. These are monogram control arms here. Let's see if it'll focus. You can see the monogram control arms are not as sharp as those on the Tamiya. But they are all there. The cradle is decently represented. Overall, it's not horrible. Now, we'll take a look at the front. Now we can see the front now that it's fully assembled. Same upper and lower control arms. Again, with the two-piece split spindle. Which, let's see if we can focus here. Let's see if we can focus a little bit more here. Here we have the two-piece spindle, as you can see by the split right in the center. Again, a great cause for misalignment issues as you're trying to put this thing together. There's the cradle there. Brings a rack, sway bar, which neither one connects to anything. got both upper and lower control arms. And again, instead of the shock mounting to the front subframe, it attaches to the chassis, which again is a great cause of misalignment issues. As you're trying to install the control arm, the shock onto the chassis and the subframe. It does make assembly a bit more difficult than it needs to be. Now here, we look at the Tamiya. Again, everything mounts to the subframe, not to the chassis, so misalignment issues are kept to a minimum. We have posable steering because the rack does actually connect to the spindles, as you can see there. The spindles on the monogram, as you see here, don't even have the arm to connect to the steering rack. Basically, the steering rack is just hanging out in the midair. Let's see if you can see that there, which takes away from the realism of it. Very disappointing. And then let's talk about the elephant in the room. You can see the Tamiya with its brake setup, calipers, rotors, whereas with the monogram, this is all you get. No rotors, no brakes at all whatsoever. Just two spindles hanging out there with nothing to attach to them. So overall, I would say the monogram is a huge disappointment in the suspension department, while the Tamiya is basically a work of art. Very well done, well engineered, everything goes together smoothly. And just a pleasure to paint and put together. So, and this comparison, suspension systems, the monogram is so far behind the Tamiya that there really is no comparison. The basic parts are there on both, but ease of assembly and more accurate representation, the Tamiya has it all the way. Now we can just place the engine in the monogram here, just for mocking up purposes. And there you see them both. Still have the rear firewall to put together on the monogram. All right, that's it for this one. Before I go, let's take a look at the rear firewall before I get involved with the detailing. This is the rear firewall, which comes in two separate parts. I don't know why, but that's just the way Monogram chose to do it. It's fully assembled, and after I put the heat insulation on, sits about as well as the Tamiya does. Has both fans, one which I have yet to install, right over here, after I paint the fins on the radiator fins. Seems to have all of the detail. Which one is more accurate, I really don't know, but the Tamiya one overall still looks much better, as we saw in the last video. Alright guys, I'll see you in part 10.